Everything we know about Little Nightmares 3. How does it fit into the timeline? Is Lo the pigtails girl? Why does Monster Baby have an eye built into its head, similar to the ones used in the mall? Is Lo one of the black kids from the digital comics? Where is Six and Mono? Will the Doctor's origin story finally be explained? Hello and welcome back to a new Little Nightmares video. This video is a mixture of information confirmed as canon by the game's producers, along with popular theories in the community and my own speculation. Little Nightmares 3 follows two new protagonists, which is surprising because the last game ended on a pretty big cliffhanger. I expected it to pick up from the end of Little Nightmares 1, or at least see the return of either Six or Mono. In fact, when I first saw the trailer in my recommended, I thought it was fan-made, because the character designs look so bizarre. I made a spoof theory that Alone is a German pilot from World War II to kind of mock this, but it's probably just people missing these beloved characters which is causing the discontent for the new ones. I love mystery, but unsolved plot lines are frustrating. People want to know what happens after Little Nightmares 1 and 2. The game's producer was asked about this and she responded by saying that the story will focus on Lo and Alone, with minor links to the previous game. Judging by the look on the developer's face when she mentions these minor links makes me think maybe they're not that minor at all, indicating that something or someone from the previous games will make an appearance or at least be alluded to in Little Nightmares 3. Alone is described as the girl with pigtails on the official Little Nightmares 3 website, which could be a hint that she is actually the hospital girl from the digital comics. It's possible that she escaped the hospital after narrowly escaping the Doctor and made her way to the necropolis. On her journey, she finds a wrench and an aviator mask, using everything she can find to protect herself. She's clearly quite resourceful, able to use the wrench in unique ways to activate ancient technology and solve puzzles. Judging by the scruffy, jagged-looking hair, she likely cut it herself, which fits her character. Lo is a dark-skinned boy with a raven mask who wields a bow and arrow. There's a bunch of theories flying around that Lo is one of the black kids from the 6th digital comic, which follows Mono's origin story and his first encounter with Thin Man. Yeah, no. I think it's very unlikely that Lo is from the comics because the only thing supporting this theory is he's black, which, I'm sorry, is not enough for me. The narrative follows the adventure of Lo and Alone on their journey to escape the Nowhere and return home. According to the Little Nightmares podcast, the Nowhere is the Little Nightmares universe, a place only accessible through dreams. Together they make their way through the Spiral, a cluster of disturbing places within the Nowhere. Among these locations are the Fun Fair, the Necropolis, and the Gloomy Factory. Just like Mono, Lo has the ability to travel long distances, using mirrors instead of TVs as a mode of transport, to transmit between each location in the Spiral. But that doesn't mean it's going to be more open than the first few games, because once you travel through a mirror, it breaks. So it's not like you can just travel back and forth throughout the Spiral, which is good. I think Little Nightmares works best in a linear format. They could have easily bulked up the game by making you travel back to previous locations for additional tasks, and it doesn't appear that they've done that. If you remember, a couple years back, Bandai Namco, the publisher, released a survey asking us what we'd like to see in the upcoming game, in which they literally put open world format as an option.
This survey suggests Bandai Namco have chosen to make Little Nightmares 3, so our choices will impact the creative decisions behind the third game.
People started freaking out, mainly me. I made a clickbait video about how this could ruin the game, so it's nice to have confirmation that it's sticking to the old style. The Gloomy Factory manufactures lollipops. Could this be where the lollipop boy got his trusty Billy Smasher? I don't see why not. In fact, I'd say it's an intentional nod to the comics, having the factory create lollipops as opposed to anything else. Monster Baby. This is the only boss we've seen so far and the first boss in the game. There appears to be an eye built into its head that mimics the one used for security in the mall. I believe some kind of entity created Monster Baby for the destruction of the necropolis. I made a theory that this entity was the lady. I really hope this isn't true though, because if it is, Six and Mono would be long dead, since Monster Baby launched its attack on the necropolis hundreds of years ago, potentially thousands even. This is why the civilization appears so archaic compared to more technologically advanced parts of the Nowhere. Also, the residents in the necropolis went to great lengths to destroy all mirrors in the city. The entity that sent Monster Baby may have been using these mirrors to either spy on the dwellers or travel through themselves. Since Lo is the only character who possesses this ability, perhaps he inherited the power through the consumption of another being, just like Six when she took the lady's powers in Little Nightmares 1. The Fun Fair is full of the same guests from Little Nightmares 1. Perhaps this is the lady's domain, before she was forced to retreat into the middle of the ocean for her services. What could have struck so much fear into the all-powerful lady? Well, upon inspecting the official website, the developers allude to an entity whose power outstrips her own. It says, the two friends will have to work together to survive in a dangerous world full of delusions and escape the grasp of an even greater threat lurking in the shadows. Could this be the eye creature seen in Little Nightmares 2 and referenced countless times in every installment? Little Nightmares 3 takes place hundreds of years after Monster Baby invaded the necropolis, turning everyone into stone. Due to the presence of guests and eye technology from the mall, I'd say this is a sequel to the events of Little Nightmares 2, but nothing is confirmed yet, making this pure speculation. Little Nightmares 3 may incorporate an origin story for the Doctor from Little Nightmares 2. In the Sounds of Nightmares, a little girl called Noon starts experiencing nightmares in the Nowhere, so she is committed to a psychiatric institute in the counties, which is basically the real world outside of the nowhere when the kids aren't dreaming. She's assigned to a counselor called Otto, working in the children's ward. When Otto was a kid, his sister, 6, was taken by the ferryman. After discovering that Noon had encountered the ferryman in her dreams, he tries to use her to travel inside the nowhere. He hooks her up to a dream apparatus and uses it to tune into the frequency of her dream. By doing so, he hears a conversation between Noon and the ferryman, in which he tries to save her from Otto's dark experiments and cure the tumor in her head by keeping her in the nowhere for good. In Otto's final desperate attempt to see his sister again, he hooks them both up to the machine, but while doing so, Noon disappears, taken by the ferryman for good. Otto moves on to his next patient, vowing to avenge his sister and finding a way into the nowhere. But how do we know his sister is 6? Well, there's a scene where Otto recalls his memories of his sister in episode 5, where you can hear 6 in the background humming the music box theme. The ferryman tells Otto that he is too old to travel over, but if he pays a high enough toll of torment, he may pass over as an adult, essentially warning Otto that if he continues exploiting children in his care, he will be welcomed into the nowhere as one of the monstrous creatures, which is what happens to adults who enter the nowhere, like the teacher, who may have been abusive to her students in the counties, so the ferryman forced her into the nowhere. Perhaps Otto continued going from child to child until he became the doctor. The game was recently delayed to 2025, presumably for further polishing. I estimate it will release sometime in the first half of the year, from January to June 2025. This fits the time frame of the recent delay and provides the marketing team plenty of time to build hype for the game. The studio. Supermassive Games took over from Tarsier Studios, who developed the first 2 entries in the franchise. I personally prefer the Hunter to the Monster Baby, but we shouldn't judge an entire game based on 20 minutes of pre-alpha gameplay. There's so much we haven't seen, and I personally think they have successfully captured the soul of Little Nightmares. The music, that signature atmosphere. It may not be as fantastic as the first 2 games, but anything close to the level of Little Nightmares is better than 90% of games in my opinion. The developers of Little Nightmares 3 are extremely competent. They've worked on Little Nightmares before, more specifically the Little Nightmares 2 Enhanced Edition, closely watched by Tarsier to see if they were up to the job. And if Tarsier can trust them to live up to the legacy of this franchise, so can I. Although it's a bit dry right now. Even though the announcement trailer for Little Nightmares 3 came out almost a year ago, I see comments from people who are surprised that there's even a 3rd game coming out. The lack of iconic characters like 6 and the lack of promotional material, as of yet, is definitely hurting the game's marketing campaign. That leaves us with the question, will Little Nightmares 3 be a flop? If it is, we may never see 6's storyline resolved, or any potential DLCs they had planned. The next trailer they release has to sell the game, because the longevity of the franchise is dependent on the success of Little Nightmares 3. Will Supermassive Games prove everyone wrong and deliver another horrifying masterpiece? As I said, the soundtrack, the horror elements, it's all still there. It feels like they're holding back with the marketing. Little Nightmares 2 had way too many trailers, which is good for me because I'm a YouTuber, but they basically leaked the whole game. Also, I won't be reading comments when the game first comes out, because one of you motherfuckers spoiled the ending of Little Nightmares 2 for me before I got a chance to play it. Jokes aside, I hope you enjoyed this video. Comment chicken if you made it this far. Thanks for watching, have a good day.